here. Actually, before I do that, let me exit out of the window here, just so that it's going to go a little bit smoother the less windows I have popped up. All right. I believe we're live, everyone. Shalom. Shabbat shalom, all of our brothers and sisters out there. So I'm Brother Doug, as always, with Brother Yahusha, Sister Marissa, and we got Sister Milka with us as well, and my mother, of course. So today we're going to be doing our usual Shabbat study here. I think we also have Brother Dennis with us as well. So we're going to be doing our usual Shabbat reading, which we start off with our chapter to chapter, book by book Torah portion here, which we have Numbers 3 to 4. So we're going to be reading Numbers 3 to 4. I'll be using my New English translation of the Septuagint, also known as the Net. I will be using this one as the one I will be reading from. So should be very modern English for those hearing and listening out there. Shouldn't be too hard for you guys to follow. It's usually a lot easier to read than Breton's. Here we go. Numbers 2, 3. Here we go. And these are the generations of Aaron and Moshe in the day when Yahuwah spoke to Moshe in Mount Sinai. These are the names, the sons of Aaron. The firstborn, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the anointed priests, whose hands they have validated to serve as priests. And Nadab and Abihu died before Yahuwah when they offered strange fire before Yahuwah in the wilderness of Sinai, but they had no children. Eleazar and Ithamar served as priests with Aaron their father. Just an FYI, some Septuagints in certain times will kind of change Mount Sinai to Horeb. Horeb's like another name for Sinai, just FYI. Okay, verse 5. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, take the tribe of Levi, and you shall place them before Aaron the priest, and they shall minister to him, and they shall keep his guard duties, and the guard duties of the sons of Yashrael before the tent of witness, to perform the works of the tent, and they shall keep all the furnishings of the tent of witness, and the guard duties, and the sons of Yashrael. According to all the works of the tent, you shall give the Levites to Aaron, to his sons, the priests. These have been as a gift to me from the sons of Yashrael. You shall appoint Aaron and his sons over the tent of witness, and they shall keep guard of their priesthood in all the things pertaining to the base altar and within the veil. But the alien, which, by the way, in this context, alien is always a word talking about stranger, sojourner, just so don't get tripped out because it says alien. So we've kind of repurposed modern definitions to that word, which originally was not intended. Okay, but anyway, so where was I at? I was at verse, was it 8 or 9?
10.
10, right. So yeah, so within the veil, but the alien who touches them shall die. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, and behold, I have taken the Levites from the midst of the sons of Yashrael in the place of every firstborn that opens the womb among the sons of Yashrael. They shall be their ransom, and the Levites shall be mine. For every firstborn is mine. In the day when I struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt, I set apart to me every firstborn, Yashrael, from human to animal. They shall be mine. I am Yahuwah. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai, saying, enroll the sons of the Levites of Levi according to their paternal houses, according to their divisions, according to their families, every male from a month and above. You shall enroll them. And Moshe and Aaron enrolled them by the voice of Yahuwah. I'm going to make a little highlight there. I think it's interesting that it says by the voice of Yahuwah.
by the word.
Yeah, I find it interesting it says voice in the Septuagint because that's showing Yahusha as the word of Yahuwah there. He's the spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna just highlight that there. Let's see here. So that was verse what? That was 17, 18. Because it starts off in verse 14, then you go to 15, and then you go to 16. Yeah, 16. By the voice of Yahuwah, in which manner Yahuwah had instructed them. And these were the sons of Levi by their names, Gershom, Kohath, Merari. And these are the names of the sons of Gershom according to their divisions. Lobani, Simei, the sons of Kohath according to their divisions, Amram, and Issachar, Hebron, Uziel. Seems like that name has carried on way to modern day because you have a Jonathan ben Uziel of the first century, so that's interesting. And the sons of Merari, according to their divisions, Muli, Mushi, these are the divisions of the Levites according to their paternal houses. For Gershon, the division of Lobani, the division of Simei, these are the divisions of Gershom. Their enrollment, according to the number of every male from a month and above, their enrollment is 7,500. And these sons of Gershom shall encamp behind the tent by the sea. And the ruler of the paternal house of the division of Gershom is Eliasaph, son of Laal. And the guard duty of the sons of Gershom in the tent of witness is the tent and the screen and the covering of the door and the tent of witness and the curtains and the of the court and the veil for the gate of the court, which is by the tent and the rest of all its tasks. So we're at verse 27 here. For Kohath, the Amramis division and Issachar's division and Hebronis division and Uzielis division. These were the divisions of Kohath. According to the number, every male from a month and above were 8,600. Wow, the Kohathites, they were big. Over 8,000. Keeping guard duty over the set apart things. The divisions of the sons of Kohath shall camp to the side of the tent towards the southwest. And the ruler of the paternal house of the divisions of Kohath is Eliasaphan, son of Uziel. And their guard duty is the ark and the table and the lampstand and the altars and the furnishings of the set apart place, which they shall minister, and the covering, all their tasks. And the ruler over the rulers of the Levites is Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, having been appointed to keep guard duties over the set apart things. For Merari, the Muli division and the Mushi division, these are the divisions of Merari. Their enrollment according to number, every male from a month old and above is 6,050, and the ruler of the paternal, so let's see here. Okay, 6,000, and the ruler of the paternal house of the division of Merari is Zuriel, son of Abihail. They shall encamp to the side of the tent towards the north. And the oversight, the guard, the duty of the sons of Merari is the capitalist tent and its bars and its pillars and its bases, all the furniture and their works, and the pillars of the court all around, their bases and their pegs and their cords. And those encamping before the tent of witness on the east are Masha and Aaron and his sons, keeping guard duty over the set apart place. For the guard duties of the sons of Yashreel, but the alien who touches it shall die. So we keep seeing that a stranger, sojourner, can't be touching the set apart things at all. At all. Kind of makes you wonder about the story about, who touched the Ark of the Covenant and then died. Kind of makes you wonder. kind of makes you wonder a little bit. But anyway, because supposedly they had Levites that were supposable Levites in modern day Israel that tried to touch the ark, then boom, they died. Kind of makes you wonder. The total enrollment of the Levites whom Moshe and Aaron enrolled by the voice of Yahuwah, according to their divisions, every male from a month old and above is 22,000. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, enroll every firstborn male of the sons of Yasharel from a month old and above, take their number by name, but you shall take the Levites for me. I am Yahuwah, in place of all the firstborn of the sons of Yasharel, and the flocks of the Levites in place of all the firstborn in the flocks of the sons of Yasharel. And Moshe enrolled in which manner Yahuwah had commanded every firstborn among the sons of Yasharel, and all the firstborn males from a month and above, according to the number by name from a month old and above, are by their enrollment 22,270. Whew, jeez. A lot. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, take the Levites in the place of all the firstborn of the sons of Yasharel, and the flocks of the Levites in place of their flocks, and the Levites shall be mine. I am Yahuwah. And as the ransom of the 273 from the firstborn of the sons of Yasharel who exceed the Levites in number, you shall also take 5 shekels. So if there's too many of the sons of Yasharel that are not matched by the Levites to substitute, now they have to, basically pay what's over. So it says here, who exceed the Levites. I'm highlighting that on mine. You also shall take 5 shekels per head. You shall take according to the set apart drachma, 20 obols to the shekel. And you shall give the money to Aaron and his sons, ransom those who exceed in number among them. And Moshe took the money and the ransom of those who exceed in number for the redemption. Interesting. Redemption of the Levites. And I definitely want to expound on that when this chapter's done, how our redemption is different now. And I wonder if this is still going to be in place when the millennial happens, because Peter, and I'll give you guys the scripture. Peter says that we were redeemed by not by silver, not by gold, but by his blood. So I kind of wonder if this part, how Paul says there had to be a change in the Torah, I kind of wonder if this is one of the changes. There's no more buying, ransoming yourself with currency. From the firstborn of the sons of Yasharel, he took the money, 1,365 shekels, according to the set apart shekels. So we're at verse 50 here. My version sometimes weirds the verses like weirdly, like it's hard to find the number for the verse. Okay, yes, we're at verse 50. From the firstborn of the sons of Yasharel, he took the money, 1,365 shekels, according to the set apart shekel. And Moshe gave the ransom of those who exceeded Aaron and his sons in number by the voice of Yahuwah. Again, by the voice of Yahuwah. In certain other versions of the Torah, it would actually say the voice of your word. So definitely talking about Yahusha there. In which the manner Yahuwah had instructed Moshe. So that's the end of chapter 3. I'm pretty sure we got some people with hands raised at this point. If not, I think there might be some questions in the chat. Yeah, that's true. I'll take correction on that. That's true. Yeah, I do believe that even though that story might not be true, there could be situations where at some point I could imagine Ashkenazis trying to touch the ark if they ever had the ark and people dying. That definitely seems plausible in my opinion, especially since scripture says that, you can't be a stranger and touch that stuff.
For anyone to say that they found it, you don't have to touch it to put forth the evidence of it being found. You can if it's in a cave, you can blast around that cave, excavate around the cave, and then just put it on for display. But anyone that has ever claimed to have found it, puts forth no proof that they found it, which leads me to believe that, Yahuwah has hidden it and he won't allow it to fall into the hands of heathen. That's just my opinion. I
Yeah,
think that
that's
if
true.
they really found it, they might not be able to touch it, but they can put it on display.
Yeah. Mom, isn't there a story during the time of Samuel or Saul where Philistines kept trying to touch it? Bad stuff was happening to them.
Yeah, they took it.
They
As a
took
matter of
it. Dagon, the image of Dagon got crushed because they took it.
Mhm.
Like the ark, it's like Yahuwah's presence is on that ark. So Yahuwah caused the statue of Dagon to like literally get crushed. So that's the only reason I was mentioning that, is that a lot of times when heathen in the past would try, bad things would happen.
With that,
Bad things.
I wonder if Yahuwah like didn't strike them down immediately so that he could strike down their mighty ones when they brought it into the land, because in order to bring it into their land, they would have had to have touched it. But he didn't
Yeah.
strike them down like immediately. But however, when you had that guy, when they're bringing it back into the land, with Dude, and you remember the ark started to fall, and the
Yeah.
guy reached out to try to
Mhm.
to cure it, and Yahuwah struck him down. So he seems to put more punishment and discipline upon his own people than the Philistines, which is a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's what I see. He struck down his person, his own child, like when he touched it. But the Philistines, he didn't strike down. He just struck down their mighty ones.
Right.
Yeah, because I really wasn't. They wanted to get it back to them as soon as they started seeing stuff like that happen. I think they realized like
Right.
what they were dealing with. They were like, okay, no, we got to get this back to the Hebrew operating. Like, we can't be holding on to this object because our mighty one has been killed. Like, literally, the whole image of Dagon like completely shattered. I think once that happened, they got a little afraid. They were like, "Oh crud, yeah, not good. All right, we need to get this back to the Hebrews." No,
But they continue to worship this thing.
like yeah, that's what you call a reprobate mind. Like their God, in essence, got killed not by Yahuwah directly, but by his presence on a object.
Mhm.
And they don't realize that there's something wrong there when there's a presence from the deity and not even the deity itself killed your mighty one. You might want to rethink things. You might I don't know, that's just me. You might want to rethink some things in your life. That's I don't know, that's just me. But there was a lot of interesting things. I was just jotting down every time it said by the voice of Yahuwah. I found that interesting because it's very similar to how it sometimes will be worded in the Targums, the way the Septuagint words it. So I thought that was interesting. Because we know that Yahuwah spoke the world into existence, right? Spoke.
Mhm.
So the voice of Yahuwah. So I found that interesting. So anyway, yeah. Trying to think else. Obviously, the silver and gold. I did want to get the scripture for you guys for that. So let me look that up real quick. I know that Peter talks about this. That it's different now. We are not purchased by silver and gold. We're purchased by His blood. Which obviously, in the Tanakh time period, you don't have Messiah's sacrifice yet. So obviously,
Yeah.
so you were not purchased
Perishable things.
by perishable things, which actually this kind of shows the difference between why the new covenant is better than the first covenant, because you had to be in the first covenant, you had to be purchased with perishable things.
Right.
So it shows how much better the new covenant is. For you know that Alua paid a ransom. I really like how the NLT has it. Says, for you know that Alua paid a ransom to save you from empty life. It was not, now I don't know what this is hinting to in the NLT, so I'll take that back. But let me just go to a more literal translation. So knowing that this is First Peter 1:18, knowing that you were ransomed from the futile ways you were inherited from your forefathers, now with perishable things such as silver and gold. Now, I don't know if Peter's saying that's futile. I think a lot of these try to paraphrase. Let me see here. I want to look at a more word for word translation because I think sometimes in Peter and Paul's letters they're not too honest. Sometimes they try to make it look like Peter and Paul are like, belittling the Torah or whatever. So let me just see here. Yeah, this is how a word for word how it words it. Knowing that not with corruptible things as silver and gold, you were redeemed from your fruitless mode of life delivered to you by your forefathers. Now, what I would say fruitless is, and this is what we need to understand, what is fruit? Fruit is works. The works of their fathers, yes, not the Torah, the works. The work, dead works, right? Paul talks about, where is that, Mom? He talks about repentance from dead works. Where does he talk about that?
Sure.
Hebrews, I know it's somewhere in Hebrews. I think it's Hebrews 6:1, if I'm not mistaken. So don't get confused, guys, when you see your fruitless mode of life delivered to you by your fathers. It's not talking about the Torah. I know some people in Christianity will spin that. It's not talking about the Torah. Because when you go to Hebrews 6:1, Paul's talking about the same thing. He says, not laying a foundation of repentance from dead works or dead fruit. Okay. So fruit are actions. The Bible universally identifies fruit as actions and in general, not one specific action, actions in general. Anything that has to do with the law is fruit. So it's important to understand that. So when First Peter 1:18 is just referring to that we have a much better redemption.
Right.
That's what he's saying. You're no longer redeemed with perishable things. You're redeemed with things that are eternal. Like his blood is an eternal redemption. So I personally believe, even though I can't prove it with just this one verse, but I believe that the law of redeeming ourselves with the silver and all that is no longer valid in the Torah because now Messiah's blood has substituted that.
That's right.
That's what I believe. I could be wrong, but I don't think that's coming back in the millennium. I could be wrong.
I think you're right about
But anyway, Paul did say that there was a change in the law, not just about the law. In the law, there was a change. So anyway, go ahead, Mom, if you want to read chapter 4.
Okay. Duties of the Kohathites, Gershonites, and Merarites. Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, take census of the sons of Kohath from among the sons of Levi by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, all who can come on duty to do the work in the tabernacle. This is the service of the sons of Kohath in the tabernacle, the most set apart things. When the camp is to set out, Aaron and his sons shall go in and take down the veil of the screen and cover the ark of the testimony with it. Then they shall put on it a covering of goatskin and spread on top of that a cloth all of blue, and shall put it in its poles. And over the table of the bread of the presence, they shall spread a cloth of blue and put on it the plates, the dishes for incense, the bowls, and the flagons for the drink offering. The regular showbread also shall be on it. Then they shall spread over them a cloth of scarlet and cover the same with a covering of goatskin, and shall put in its poles. And they shall take a cloth of blue and cover the lampstand for the light with its lamps, its tongs, its trays, and all the vessels for oil with which it is supplied. And they shall put it with all its utensils in a covering of goatskin and put it on the carrying frame. And over the golden altar they shall spread a cloth of blue and cover it with a covering of goatskin, and shall put in its poles. And they shall take all the vessels of the service that are used in the sanctuary, and put them in a cloth of blue, and cover them with a covering of goatskin, and put them on the carrying frame. And they shall take away the ashes from the altar, and spread a purple cloth over it. And they shall put on it all the utensils of the altar, which are used for the service there, the fire pans, the forks, the shovels, and the basins, all the utensils of the altar, and they shall spread on it a covering of goatskin, and shall put in its poles. And when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the sanctuary and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, as the camp sets out, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to carry these, but they must not touch the set apart things, lest they die. These are the things of the tabernacle that the sons of Kohath are to carry. And Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the priest, shall have charge of the oil for the light, the fragrant incense, the regular grain offering, and the anointing oil, with the oversight of the whole tabernacle, and all that is in it, of the sanctuary and its vessels. Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, saying, let not the tribe of the clans of the Kohathites be destroyed from among the Levites, but deal thus with them, that they may live and not die when they come near to the most set apart things. Aaron and his sons shall go in and appoint them each to his task and to his burden, but they shall not go in to look on the set apart things, even for a moment, lest they die. Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, take a census of the sons of Gershon, also by their fathers' houses and by their clans, from 30 years old up to 50 years old. You shall list them, all who come to do duty, to do service in the tent of meeting. This is the service of the clans of the Gershonites in serving and bearing burdens. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle and the tent of meeting with its covering, and the covering of goatskin that is on, and the covering of goatskin that is on top of it, and the screen for the entrance of the tabernacle, and the hangings of the court, and the screen for the entrance of the gate of the court that is around the tabernacle and the altar, and their courts, and all the equipment for their service. And they shall do all that needs to be done with regard to it. All the service of the sons of the Gershonites shall be at the command of Aaron and his sons in all that they are to carry and in all that they have to do. And you shall assign to their charge all that they are to carry. This is the service of the clans of the sons of the Gershonites in the tabernacle, and their guard duty is to be under the direction of Itamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. As for the sons of Merari, you shall list them by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old. And you shall list them, everyone who can come on duty to do the service of the tabernacle. And this is what they are charged to carry as the whole of their service in the tent of meeting and the frames of the tabernacle with its bars, pillars, and bases, and the pillars around the court with their bases, pegs, and cords, with all their equipment and all their accessories. And you shall list by name the objects that they are required to carry. This is the service of the clans of the sons of Merari, the whole of the service in the tabernacle under the direction of Itamar, the son of Aaron the priest. And Moshe and Aaron and the chiefs of the congregation listed the sons of Kohathites by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, everyone who could come on duty for service in the tent of meeting. And those listed by clans were 2,750. This was the list of the clans of Kohathites, all who served in the tent of meeting, whom Moshe and Aaron listed according to the commandment of Yahuwah by Moshe. Those listed on the sons of Gershon by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, everyone who could come on duty for service in the tabernacle. Those listed by their clans and their fathers' houses were 2,630. This was the list of the clans of the sons of Gershon, all who served in the tent of meeting, whom Moshe and Aaron listed according to the commandment of Yahuwah. Those listed of the clans of the sons of Merari by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, everyone who could come on duty for service in the tabernacle. Those listed by clans were 3,200. This was the list of the clans of the sons of Merari, whom Moshe and Aaron listed according to the commandment of Yahuwah by Moshe. All those who were listed of the Levites, whom Moshe and Aaron, the chiefs of Yashrael, listed by their clans and their fathers' houses, from 30 years old up to 50 years old, everyone who could come to do the service of ministry and the service of bearing burdens in the tabernacle. Those listed were 8,580. According to the commandment of Yahuwah through Moshe, they were listed, each one with his task of serving and carrying. Thus, they were listed by him as Yahuwah commanded Moshe.
So anything you wanted to share, Mom?
I just want to see, I'm probably going to find the same thing, but was it 30 to 50 or was it 25 to 50?
It's supposed to be 25 to 50.
Yeah, it says the same thing in my NIV, so it must be, that must be in the Masoretic text.
Yeah.
Because I was reading from the ESV just then.
Yeah, the Masoretes seem to add another 10 years, which doesn't make much sense. Then you're serving only 15 years when that happens. So they would have people who that the Levites would only serve from 35 to 50. That's essentially only 15 years you're serving. That's kind of ridiculous.
Well, it says 30 to 50, so that would be 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you said 35.
No, 30. But what I was saying is that I thought that other versions had said 25.
Yeah, yeah, that's the consensus, really. The older, a lot of the older versions of the Torah all agree with the Septuagint 25. So somewhere along the line, they decided to make it that they had to wait until they're 30 years old to serve, which is kind of ridiculous because
Yeah.
what happens if a priest dies? That means the son can't start being in office until he's 30. That's a little ridiculous. So you're gonna have a bigger gap if you're waiting until you're 30 years old of someone in the priesthood. So versus 25, there's a lot less of a gap if a priest dies. His son would most likely already be in his 20s by the time that happens. So, I definitely side with the Septuagint on that matter. And there's times in the Masoretic where it says 25, so it's very weird. There's like a whole big, issue with that with the Masoretic. Certain verses say 25 to 50 in the Masoretic, other verses don't. So it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like very confusing in the Masoretic text because a certain verse will say 25, other verses will say 30. It gets really confusing. So, but yeah, I was just reading that the other day, and We haven't gotten there. In chapter 8, though, it mentions it again. They're supposed to be 25 to 50.
You know, I'm not trying to take away a point of any kind, but I'm just thinking, isn't it interesting that Yahusha's ministry started at 30?
Yeah.
When he was here
Yeah.
all his life, it could have started earlier than that, you know?
His ministry started at 30, though, but he was doing stuff before he was 30. I mean, he was, you know, he didn't start ministry, quote unquote, like starting to preach at 30. You know what I'm saying? His official ministry might have started at 30, but he was reading in the temple. He was doing this. He was doing that. It didn't just start at 30. You know, you could say his corporate ministry started when he was 30 years old, not ministry work in general. You know what I'm saying? So he's still doing stuff before he's 30. You know, he's preaching probably. You know, even the traditions that Christianity has is that once he was like, you know, a older child, he was already preaching.
True.
He was already teaching when he was like.
That's true.
Most traditions put like, you know, when he's like you know, past the toddler stage, maybe 8, 9 years old, he would have been teaching. You know, that's what the whole prophecy in Isaiah 11's about, is that as a youngster, he would know the scriptures like that.
And at 12, they were amazed. The teachers of the law were amazed at his knowledge and, you know, of things. And
a lot of people take away from that. A lot of people that don't believe in the oneness, they'll point to the New Testament and say that he grew in knowledge of the scriptures or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't take away with Isaiah 11. Because if you take away what Isaiah 11 has, then you can't say he's the Messiah then. Because it says that the child would know right from wrong before it was taught right from wrong. That's literally what it says in Isaiah 11. So if you don't believe that the Messiah is supposed to be a divine being and not just a mere mortal, then you have a problem with Isaiah chapter 11. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
I would say that he wasn't teaching in the sense of teaching. He may have been like speaking in the synagogues, but in the sense of like publicly teaching, he definitely wasn't doing that. Because when he steps onto the scene, you have people saying, "Who is this man? You know, where did he come from? Is he not the son of Yehusuf?" So when he stepped onto the scene, like he wasn't known before then. I mean, maybe he was known as, you know, the son of Yehusuf, and he was have knowledge and wisdom, but definitely not in the sense of the public to be, you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. That's kind of what I believe too. That like as far as corporate or public ministry, he wasn't really doing anything until 30. But I think he definitely, though, as far as having knowledge of the scriptures and teaching in a somewhat sense, like, he would have been, because I forget, there's a verse in the New Testament, isn't it, Mom, like where, or that's just maybe tradition, where he's 8, 9 years old in the temple and he's actually teaching to these rabbis even. I think that's just more
12.
Yeah, like where he's like 12 years old in the temple and all that. And he might have not been like teaching out in public like Brother Yahusha said, but he was on some level teaching before then.
That's the whole episode where they lost track of him. And
but a lot of people want to say, oh, that's just because he was growing in knowledge, that there was nothing supernatural to that. If you look at Isaiah 11, I'll just read from Isaiah 11 here what I'm talking about. It says that he would know basically righteousness from wickedness before he was even taught.
Yep.
Starting at verse 2 of Isaiah 11, reading from the Septuagint here, it says, the spirit of Alua would rest upon him, the spirit of wisdom. So this is the sevenfold spirit they like to call in Christianity, the 7 spirits. Right? The spirit of wisdom, understanding, spirit of counsel, strength, spirit of knowledge, and righteousness shall fill him. The spirit of the fear of Alua, which I believe that's the 7th one right there in the next verse. He shall not rightly rule according to appearance, nor reprove according to report, which, by the way, that's what Yahuwah does. Okay, he does not.
Do me a favor. Can you
Yeah.
read those verses about the seven spirits? Read them and compare it with the Septuagint with the Masoretic. One is
Yeah.
missing. One is missing a spirit.
Yeah. Going back to the Masoretic here in verse 2.
I have it open.
Counsel, might, that's 2. Knowledge, 3. Fear of
Fear.
Yahuwah, 4. Wow. Interesting. That's all they have. That's definitely missing a couple.
Mhm.
And then it goes straight to the next verse where it talks about he has the spirit of quick understanding in the fear of Yahuwah. So I guess quick understanding in the fear of Yahuwah. I guess you can make 2 out of that one because it's like a double thing. He shall not rightly rule after the sight of his eyes, he to reprove after the hearing of his ears, but with righteousness shall rightly rule the poor, reprove with equity. I don't even like the word equity there. I hate that word equity. It shouldn't be equity. Reprove the lowly of the earth, and shall smite the earth with the word of his mouth. Again, it's talking about Yahushua here, the word of his mouth. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 quotes from this. With the breath of his lips shall destroy the wicked one. Again, Paul uses this concept in 2 Thessalonians. And he shall have his loins girded with righteousness, his sides clothed with truth. Okay, I'm thinking of another chapter then. It might be chapter 7.
7, I think, is what you're
7
thinking of.
talks about
The
before this child will know right and wrong, before it's taught right and wrong.
And what he's fed, what he eats.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. All right, so let's start with verse 14 here. Therefore, Yahuwah himself shall give you signs to this, Isaiah 7:14. Behold, a virgin shall conceive in the womb, and shall bring forth a son, and you shall call his name Emmanuel. Butter and honey he shall eat before he knows either to prefer evil or choose good. Before the child shall know good or evil, he refuses evil to choose good. And the land shall be forsaken, which you are afraid of because of the 2 kings. Now, the common sense would tell you here. So there's something supernatural about the Messiah. He would know to choose good over evil before knowing on a human perspective what good and evil is. Like there's an age of accountability, basically. So what it's saying is before he would be old enough to know good and evil, he already knows.
Yeah.
To choose righteousness. No mortal human can claim that.
That's right.
I don't care who you are. Enoch, when he was born, did not know that at a young age. Noah did not know that before he was at the age of accountability. Every mortal that has existed cannot claim that. So that's what I'm saying. So Isaiah 7:16 clearly shows something divine about the coming Messiah. Clearly. So those that want to say from the New Testament, he was grown in knowledge. Well, first of all, you're talking about 2 different contexts. You're talking about 2 different contexts. So just because he was grown in knowledge does not mean he did not know righteousness from wickedness until he was learning about the Torah. Go ahead, Brother Yahushua.
The missing spirit is the spirit of piety, in there, which is also it's in older versions of the Masoretic. It's in the Wycliffe and then all the way back to the Septuagint.
That's the Vulgate. The
Wycliffe.
Wycliffe's the Vulgate. Yeah, that's interesting. The Vulgate's the Latin Bible. So wow, I'm surprised they have it in it.
That is really interesting.
Which actually they would have had closer to the original Septuagint, actually, in the Vulgate, because the Vulgate was 300 AD, 400 AD. So they would have had something close to the original source, which I think there's, you can go to quotes from the church fathers about that. They would have had very close to the original Septuagint at that point.
We don't like to give St. Jerome much credit.
I'm not talking about Jerome even. I'm talking about Irenaeus. I'm talking about a lot of the other guys like Tertullian, all
Yeah.
of them would have quotes about the Vulgate that really they were supposed to be using the Septuagint for the Vulgate, but Jerome switched to a Hebrew copy halfway through. So that's something, anyone that's curious about that, you can look that up for yourselves. The Vulgate is like a hybrid. It's a hybrid manuscript because they use the Greek Septuagint plus whatever Hebrew version they had in 3rd century AD. I don't know what they would have had, but there's no Hebrew manuscript today that even goes back to that time period. So I don't know what they could have had. Maybe they used Targums. Who knows? I don't know. But it's a historical fact that Jerome at some point switched to a Hebrew copy. So, but the Wycliffe, the reason I mentioned this, the Wycliffe is a Vulgate based. So I'm not surprised that they have that. John Wycliffe has it. I'm not surprised. Unfortunately, Breton, when he got his hands on the Septuagint, he got a Latin hand-me-down, is what happened, because he got a Codex Vaticanus. So he got a Latin translation of a earlier Greek Septuagint. So it's very possible the Wycliffe was very Baruch in his time period because 1394, was what, a good 500 years before Breton had his Septuagint. So in a 500-year gap, they could be taking stuff out. So piety, yeah, definitely should be there. That was a good point, bro. That was a good point. I wonder. Oh, Charles Thompson, huh? He has it. Huh. Okay. Something's going on with that. He's using a different source, though. I wonder if Thompson uses either the Alexandrinus. Yeah, that's something I want to look up later on. What family of the Septuagint he's using? Because there's three sources. There's Codex Alexandrinus, Codex Vaticanus, and I forget the third one. So I want to look into that. But yeah, so Charles Thompson, his Greek Bible, he actually has piety there, the spirit of piety. Which, by the way, piety just means fear of Yahuwah, just FYI. Piety, literally, if you look in the King James Dictionary, just means reverence.
Reverence, yeah.
It means the reverence of Yahuwah. That's all it means. It's like it's like not some super mystical word. It means fear, a different type of fear, like more like a awe of the Father. You're in awe of Him. You're in piety of Him.
I think that there would have to have been a distinction between these two, because the Septuagint, it goes from the spirit of knowledge, the spirit of piety, and then the spirit of the fear of Yahuwah. It makes a distinction between the two.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying, though. It's a different type of fear. Like reverence and fear are not the same word. The ISR confuses things with that. Like certain translators try to make it look like reverence and fear is the same thing. It's not the same thing.
So you're saying that reverence of piety towards Yahuwah is the same as reverence to Yahuwah?
Like piety means reverence. Like if I'll share the link with you guys again with that KJV dictionary.
So
But
then
the piety is loving fear. You're in awe of someone, versus regular fear is like terrified. There's like it's not exactly the same thing. They're related in a way, but they're not the same word. They're like, so what I'm trying to say is reverence is not the same thing as fear. You could fear someone and not have respect for them. You could fear someone and not lovingly fear them. Like reverence is something we have for our parents if we lovingly fear them. But I could be terrified of a situation and not have respect for whoever causes terror to me. So there is a difference. There is a distinction. And the King James Dictionary even makes distinction on it. It gives a whole definition of piety and all that from the Webster Dictionary. So piety is a very old Middle English word that means reverence. It means lovingly fearing something, to be in awe. The David Boucher Aramaic New Testament a lot of times will translate the word the word for reverence as like in awe. So it's definitely a different word. It's not the same thing. So there, people on the day of judgment, you're gonna have right the wicked that are just like in straight fear, terror, but they're not gonna have reverence for him. They're not gonna, be in awe of him or show piety to him. Like a lot of times you'll see that in older Bibles when it talks about the wicked, like their impiety. Is that the right word, Mom? The opposite of piety, impiety.
Yeah.
So it'll say they're not reverent, they're impious. It's kind of the
Right.
same thing.
Pious
So
is another-
like if you have a King James Bible, you'll see it a lot how it's being used. But I think where it confuses us is we're very modern English at this point. So
Mhm, mhm.
so piety is not a word we use a lot. So that's part of the problem. But I'll give you guys the link of what I'm talking about here. So this is the AV 1611 dictionary, based on the 1828 Webster, not to confuse with the modern Webster. This is like based on a dictionary from the 1800s, basically. So this is going to have like a lot more accurate definitions of certain biblical words. So piety. Piety, in principle, is a compound of veneration or reverence of the supreme being and love of his character. Woo, I didn't know about this. Veneration accompanied with love. And piety in practice is the exercise of these affections in obedience to his will. Wow. I'm impressed. I'm actually impressed with this dictionary that they would admit this. So this has to do with obedience. This has to do with this type of reverence is even a special type of reverence. This is lovingly fearing you who is so much that you're in obedient to his will. According to practice, this would have to do with devotion to him, adequate relief.
It comes with knowing his attributes. We know that he is all power.
And what I just talked about, and there is a second definition of this, is what I just talked about: reverence of parents or friends, accompanied with affection, devotion to their honor and happiness, or I should say joyfulness. I don't like the word happiness, joyfulness. So this gives you probably the best definition that I could explain what piety means. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
I know what piety means. I'm saying both piety and fear of Yahuwah are listed. So what fear of Yahuwah is being referred to here? Because it's definitely not reverence or piety, because piety is listed right before it.
Yeah, it must be a different type of fear. It must be more or less. There is a type of fear of Yahuwah we're supposed to have that's kind of like dread or terror. Like you're not, every time sin is knocking at that door, you should have somewhat of that type of fear of terror. Like, there is a curse to me giving into sin. There is a curse. There is a punishment to this that I should fear. So I think that's what that possibly could deal with. I know in Christianity they tell us, oh, fears of the devil, fears this, fears that.
No.
That's part of the problem. So we have a biased, like, anti-fear concept, and we don't like fear. So you get translators, like, I really blame the ISR and the Halu scriptures for this, because every time fear is used, they put reverence. And you're confusing people. And it's not right. It's not right to do that. Just because you don't like fear, because you probably came from a Christian background, talking about translators out there, you need to unlearn that, and you need to be honest when you're translating the scriptures. You need to stop trying to put your own spin on things. So I think there's a lot of bias that we have, like other things we have, and that's why people won't accept that there is a type of really terror that there should be mentally we should have for the Father, that we should be afraid to sin against him.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with having that type of fear. So I do think that's the difference between regular fear of Yahuwah versus piety or reverence. like the piety or reverence is more it's a more it's a lot deeper type of fear. It's not, oh my goodness, I'm afraid now. It's like more like piety is like how David reverenced Yahuwah, how
Yeah.
um but I think you have to have both. You can't take out one without the other. So a lot of us we like to talk about the reverence and the piety for him, but then we kind of push aside the spirit, literal fear, terror. And that definitely should be in our walk.
Yeah.
If we're gonna copy Messiah, that should be in our walk. There should be a fear of, I better make sure I don't give in to temptation.
Right.
Because inevitably Yahuwah repays a person's reward for their works. So it is a healthy type of fear to have, but we're taught that that's wrong somehow. Because obviously, like you said, brother, there are two different words here. They can't be the same thing. So I think the problem is the translators. And a lot of us have been really, when we come into this walk, we're raised on these restored name Bibles a lot.
Yeah.
So it's like it almost gets psychologically in our brain that they're the same thing. They're not. Clearly they're not. Even in the Middle English language, they're not. So, but anyway, that's the best way to describe pious is how, or piety is how they explain it here in the Webster Dictionary. I really recommend people take a look at that just to kind of get a distinction between piety and regular fear.
How do we, if that is the fear of Yahuwah, what is the difference between that fear, that dread of Yahuwah sinning against him, versus when he says, I have not given you a spirit of fear?
Well, he's not giving us a spirit of man, fear of man.
Right.
When he's talking about a spirit of fear, he's talking about a fear of man. A fear of man will cause you to obey man over Yahuwah, which you see right with the apostles in Acts chapter 5. Should we obey men rather than Yahuwah? Should we obey you just because you're threatening us? No, we're gonna basically, Yahuwah, when he talks about don't be afraid, don't fear, right? In Joshua chapter 1, he's talking about the fear of their enemies. He's talking about don't fear these giants, right? Don't fear the spirits of darkness. Don't fear demons. That's what he's talking about. He's not saying don't to have any fear at all. And that's what happens is we come from a New Testament background. We take one verse completely out of context. We take one verse completely out of context, or a couple of verses out of context, and we get this idea. We throw the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, we're not supposed to have any fear anymore at all. No fear in our lives at all. And if that's true, then why does Yahuwah in the New Testament, mind you, as when not even talking about reverence, he says, fear me, that they would fear me always, like in the context of fear, terror. He says, they are to fear me always. I tested them in the wilderness, right? Book of Deuteronomy, so that they would always fear me, so that they might fear me always. So if Yahuwah wanted us to not have fear anymore, why would he say that in his Torah? So what happens is we start, like me and brother Joshua were talking about off the record the other day. The problem in this walk is we're trying to interpret the Torah from the New Testament. You don't do that. Yeah. You don't do that. Okay? You got to understand context, and you got to understand line by line, precept by precept. We can't take one verse that is a different context and then insert it into the Torah. You can't do that. That's what causes people to think the Sethite theory is correct and this and that false doctrine, because they're taking one context and inserting it into a verse that has nothing to do with that verse in the New Testament. And that's why we get this idea that fear is bad. Fear of itself is bad. And that I believe that's a heretical doctrine. I really do, because then you got to throw away every verse in the Old Testament Yahuwah tells us to fear him. Every time he says that, which he says it a lot. He says it a lot. He's like, I've tested them in the wilderness with hunger so that they would always fear me. So then you got to throw away that verse. You got to throw away all the times Yahuwah says that you need to fear me. Book of Proverbs, right? Doesn't say reverence. It says that the fear of Yahuwah is the beginning of wisdom,
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
That's talking about the terror of Yahuwah. So there has to be
Mhm.
a place of that in our lives. There has to be, because if not, then we have to throw away every time it talks about fearing it. You know, and there's a lot of times. So there has to be there has to be some dread of Yahuwah in our lives, that we're afraid to sin against him. Because what happens is, when you don't fear something, you don't have any type of even dread or fear for something, you'll have no problem living in sin. You take away the fear of Yahuwah, you're going to live in sin, because you're not fearing him. You're not afraid to transgress against him. You know what I'm saying? So you take away just normal dread and fear away from him, that essentially is what causes people to live in sinful lifestyles. If you're going to take that away. If you're going to take that away and say, oh, we don't fear, we just reverence him, and it's just one or the other, then in essence, you can't have reverence without fear. They're kind of connected. So if you're not fearing him on a normal, dreadful level, you'll never get to the point where you have reverence for him. You know, it's kind of connected. Even though they're different words, they're kind of connected, because reverence is more of fear mixed with being in awe of him and loving him and wanting to obey him. It's like a mixture. And if you don't have the one, you're not going to have the other. It's impossible. So what we've done in this walk is, because we're not fully out of Christianity, we've made fear a dirty name or a dirty word, and we just want to throw it away, because we're taught, oh, fear's bad. Perfect love casts out fear. But what type of fear is John talking about? That's the point. What type of fear? He's talking about the fear of man. He's not talking about the fear
Right.
of Yahuwah. Because if he's talking about the fear of Yahuwah, guess what? John is contradicting the whole Torah. If that's what he means, he would be contradicting the whole Torah. And that's why you have people that run away from the New Testament. It's because they don't understand what John's saying. They don't understand what Paul's saying in context. And they give up the New Testament, because then they realize that they're actually contradicting. If their interpretation of them is correct and we're wrong, then you have the New Testament contradicting the Old Testament. There's two options we have here. Either we misunderstand a lot of this stuff about fear, or you have to throw away the New Testament, because now it's contradicting the Most High. It's one or the other. It's either we misunderstand a lot of things, or you have a book that cannot be reconciled with one another. So I would like to pick that we misunderstand a lot of things, and there's a lot of things we need to unlearn, and including fear is righteous. It's nothing wrong with having the dread of Yahuwah in your mind. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, of course, the Gnostics have twisted that, manipulated that into this demiurge concept. I get that. I'm not denying that. But there is a natural righteous fear of Yahuwah of itself in the Tanakh all the way through the Bible. There's a natural fear of him. Matter of fact, what's one example in the New Testament I can give that they definitely did not fear Yahuwah by doing something? What is their names? One is Sapphira, the one Ananias and Sapphira. They did not fear Yahuwah, and they made a false vow because they didn't fear him. If they would have feared Yahuwah, they never would have done that. So there's perfect examples of what happens when you remove the fear of Yahuwah in a culture. You are going to have sin running rampant, and all that. So hopefully I explained why there has to be a necessity of fear. And that's what I believe Isaiah 11 is actually talking about. He had a spirit, ruach, of reverence, piousness or piety, and a spirit of actual literal fear of the Father. And they are separate, but they, at the same time, those two words or two spirits can be connected. Because if you have literal dread and fear of the Father, it will turn into reverence. It will turn into piety, because the more you love his Torah, the more you fear him, the more eventually you will revere him. It's connected. If you take away the literal terror or fear of him, you're most likely will never reverence him. you most likely will never, because you won't be afraid to sin against him. You know what I'm saying? So you're just going to constantly live your life in sin. You don't fear him. So see what I'm saying? It's connected. It's not separate. It's connected. Go ahead. Mom.
Yahusha himself said, fear not him who can kill the body.
Yeah, fear him
him.
who could kill.
Yeah, so right out of the
in
mouth
Gehenna.
of the Savior,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And I'm surprised. I would be shocked to see what word they use, the ISR uses in that verse, if they try to put reverence there. Which again is just being dishonest with the text. I don't understand why people have such a problem with the word fear. I don't get it. You know, it's like the translations like that I have an issue with, because they have biases that are trying to put into the text. Fear him who has power to kill both body. It should actually be spirit.
Okay.
Because soul in that context doesn't make sense, because a soul is a body and a spirit together. So to say body and soul, you're kind of being redundant.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If for you to have a soul, if you need a body, it can't be separate from a body. You know what I'm saying? So it should actually say who can kill body and spirit in Gehenna. Okay. So let me see here. So it says, yeah, do not be afraid, even NIV here. Do not be afraid of those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both spirit and body in Gehenna. So right there, it shows that you are to be afraid of the Father. There should be some terror of Yahuwah in you. And Yahushua is the one saying this. So obviously, I think we've had a misunderstanding of fear. And I think we've had what I would say a biased outlook of fear, and that fear of itself is evil. Because I ever since I came into this walk, I keep hearing, oh, fears of the devil, regular fears of the devil. I'm like, what? I'm like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. I don't know. I'm on a little tangent here, but that just is one of the pet peeves I have, is like, you can't throw out fear. You can't throw out the fear of Yahuwah. You can't mix the fear of Yahuwah with the fear of the enemy or fear of the world. It's not the same thing. It's not. So we're kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater there. We should remember, isn't there a scripture that talks about tremble at his words?
Fear and trembling. We're supposed to
Tremble at his word.
Isn't it work out our salvation with
fear and trembling? Yep. Yeah. So the New Testament, it is in the New Testament as well.
Yes.
So hopefully that was for someone out there, that we do need to have fear of Yahuwah aside from reverence of him. And it's really connected. I mean, you're not going to have true, real reverence as far as the definition of what piety means without a regular fear of Yahuwah. You can't have one without the other. So, because if you're not afraid to sin against him, that's not reverence. If you're gonna live in sin and say I love you, no, that's not what he defines as love. So again, to have a loving type of fear or reverence, and to be in awe of him, you have to at first be afraid of him. There's no way around it. There's no way around it. So, but anyway, so hopefully that explained that. But that was a good question, Brother Yahusha. That was a very good question.
Excellent.
Because I've heard that there's so much confusion of that in this walk, that I think that's something that needed to be addressed, because that's something very confusing. And it's due to some translators that have a bias, whatever bias they have. They don't like the word fear and they want to substitute it and confuse people. But anyway, yeah. So that was Numbers chapter 4, right? So trying to think if there was anything else to bring up. We obviously had the divisions of the Levites. You had certain clans taking care of the implements of the tabernacle. And then we talked about the 7 spirits of Yahuwah here. And again, Isaiah 7:16 shows that Yahushua would have some type of miraculous wisdom that most young children don't have. Again, so that seems to provide that he can't be just a regular mortal being and have that type of wisdom that early on in his life. So anyway, trying to think what else. So that was pretty much the end of the numbers numbers portion. We do have Ayub, Book of Job, chapter 19 and 20 coming up. I just want to just take another look at the chapter we just read just to make sure that we didn't forget to bring anything else up. A lot of this had to do with the divisions of the Levites and all of that. The sacrifices that they would be set over, certain clans would be set over the menorah and all that. You would have a certain clan that would deal with all the implements of the temple. Trying to see. I was on a little intermission break while my mom read, so I might have not caught all this stuff. Service of the community of Gershom. Paintings of the court. Okay. Yeah, this is pretty much self-explanatory for the most part. Okay. Pillars of the courtyard and all that. Okay. Then you got the clans of Merari. The only thing I think we forgot to mention is, I don't know if you noticed in chapter 3, but in chapter 3, your version probably just said priest, right?
Yes.
The Septuagint said anointed priest. I found it interesting that the Masoretic leaves out the word anointed for whatever strange reason in chapter 3. See where it talks about it, the anointed priest. Trying to see here, I'm scrolling through here. Oh, what I did want to talk about too was the law of the firstborn is hinted at in chapter 3 as well. I know a lot of people believe today we're supposed to still redeem the firstborn, but from what I've seen in Torah, the only issue with that is you don't have a priest to do that. Because when you redeem the firstborn, you have to sacrifice an animal. You have to sacrifice an animal. So you, like, for example, if I had a firstborn son, I would have to redeem him and then put a lamb in his place and slaughter that lamb, slaughter that goat. You know what I'm saying? So really, there's no way to fully keep that commandment today in that context. And we saw in the previous chapter that even says Yahuwah substituted the firstborn of Israel with the Levites as his portion. So instead of the firstborn of the other 11 tribes, Levites became Yahuwah's portion technically. So I could be wrong, but that's what I was seeing from chapter 3 as well, is that it seems like the law of the firstborn is also connected to the Levitical priesthood, since the Levites were substituted for the firstborn of Israel. Go ahead, Brother Yahusha.
To add to that the firstborn, it wasn't just any lamb, it was a firstborn. A firstborn was redeemed through a firstborn, which is also what you see. I don't fully understand it, but I recognize it to be the case that Yahusha was a firstborn that redeemed a firstborn. Was Yahuwah's firstborn, and Yahusha redeems Yashraal. Yashraal is called Yahuwah's firstborn. So you have a firstborn redeeming a firstborn. There's a lot more to that, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, man. There's tons of scriptures we can go to try to really go deeper into that at another time. But there's a lot about the firstborn. I think there's a lot of spiritual connotations to it as well. The fact that, like you said, we are his firstborn, even in a spiritual sense, all of Israel is his firstborn.
The way that I'm able to, at least for me, the way that I'm able to reconcile that with Yahusha being Yahuwah's firstborn but at the same time, Yashraal is Yahuwah's firstborn. You see scripture calling Yahusha the root and the offspring of Dude, meaning that Dude proceeded forth from him, but he also proceeded from Dude. And so in that sense, like you have, yes, Yashraal is Yahuwah's firstborn, but the only way that you can be Yashraal is through Yahusha. You have to be grafted into the vine in order to be Yashraal to begin with. So Yashraal is Yahuwah's firstborn, but only through Yahusha, the firstborn. If that makes any sense.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. We are only his children through Yahusha. Even in a physical sense, you can go to the New Testament, right? Who's the one that gives us the ability to have the resurrection? Yahusha. He's the first of the first fruits. He's the only reason we have a resurrection. His resurrection gave us our eventual resurrection in him. So, like you were saying, without him, we have nothing. We die, we just go to Sheol, and that's it. That's it. Cease to exist. That's what happens without the resurrection. So that the resurrection gives us eternal life. And you know, that seems to be a lost concept with a lot of believers today, is what eternal life actually is. And what eternal salvation is the resurrection. You can't have eternal life without the resurrection. So yeah, we become physically B'nai Elohim or B'nai Alua through the only begotten, through the only brought forth Ben of Alua, who is Alua himself. That's the only way it happens. And so that, and that's why the Pharisees wanted to stone him, by the way. They knew what he was saying. They knew what he was saying. They were like, you make yourself equal with Alua as a mortal man. They knew what he was saying. So, anyway, but that's a whole nother topic. But just to reiterate, the idea that he never said he was the father is retarded. I'm sorry, anyone that believes that really don't know what he's saying. He clearly was saying he's Yahuwah all the time. Every time he went to the Pharisees, every time he went to the crowds, I and my Father, we are one. Constantly telling his disciples and even the crowds, and that's why they wanted to stone him. They hated him and wanted to stone him. A lot of the crowds could not accept that. You even had the Pharisees, wanting to stone him constantly, because he said, before Abraham was I am, John chapter 8. They wanted to stone him. Why? Because he said he was the Ahaya, Ashar Ahaya, which in English, I am that I am. So he literally was claiming to be the voice in the burning bush. So anyway, I don't know if that's a new hand, brother. Is that? Or is that? I can't tell.
No.
All right, just double checking. So I think we're going to end. I don't think there's anything else really to mention about the 2 chapters we just read. So I think we're going to end this recording, do a new recording, and we're going to have a couple new readers do Job, Ayub, 19 and 20, and then after that will be the conclusion for today's study. But we're going to come right back, guys. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back shortly with Ayub chapter 19 and 20. Well, let me just end this live here.